His talk was a great success. People really liked it. One of the young priests even came up to him to tell him how much he liked it. And then he said, "But Rabbi, if you would please do me a favor, can you repeat the story for me? I want to make sure I have it right in my mind." So Rabbi Shochet didn't want to do that, stand there having this long conversation with the priest in public. But he told him, "If you come to my room in a little while, so then I'll be happy to repeat it to you." So that's what happened. The little while later was a knock on the door. He opened it. There was the young novice. He invited him in, showed him a comfortable place to sit, and he told him the story. And he saw the novice was focused very much on his telling, was very quiet and very intense looking. And when he finished, the novice said, "Thank you, but please, I need to hear it one more time." And Rabbi Shochet was starting to wonder, maybe this guy's not normal. What's going on here? But he told it the third time. And again, the novice thanked him very much, and then started asking him questions about the Tosafos Yom Tov. What was his real name? When did he live? Where did he live? What other books did he write? Etc., etc. Rabbi Shochet knew the answer to some of the questions, and some of the questions he didn't. But and it was, by the way, it was many years later. He said he discovered that he himself was a descendant of the Tosafos Yom Tov. In any case, so after they finished with the questions and the answers, so the novice thanked him again, and he left. And Rabbi Shochet, for days or maybe weeks, he wondered about this strange episode. He wondered if maybe this young man was insane, or he didn't know what was going on exactly. But eventually he forgot about it. Many years later, it was 15 years later, he made a trip to Eretz Israel, and of course he came to the Kotel Maravi, the Western Wall, to daven. And when he finished praying, so a man came up to him and said and gave him a very cheerful Shalom Aleichem. And Rabbi Shochet looked at him. He didn't know who he was, but he said Aleichem Shalom. But the man insisted that they knew each other. And so Rabbi Shochet stared at him. He said, "I can't." And he said, "I'm sorry, I can't place you." He wondered if perhaps the man had mistaken him for somebody else, which often happens. But the man says, "No, we know each other." He said, "Do you remember 15 years ago you gave a talk at the University of Buffalo for Jewish and non-Jewish students?" And Rabbi Shochet said, "Yeah, I remember that." And so he said, "Well," he said, I was that young priest who asked you to repeat the story several times." Rabbi Shochet said, "What? How can that be?" And the man gave a big smile, and he started to explain to him what the background was. He began by saying, "My parents were Jewish. They were survivors of the Holocaust from Poland, and after the war they immigrated to the United States and were determined to conceal their Jewish identity. They raised me as a non-Jew. They even sent me to a seminary for priests when I was young, and that's where I did my schooling. When my mother passed away, while I was still young, a teenager." When she passed away, she spoke to me. Before she passed away, she spoke to me privately and confessed that they are Jewish and that I'm Jewish, but that they were so terrified of the persecution of Jews that they concealed their Jewishness, and they anyway wanted nothing more to do with Judaism. I was shocked, and I really couldn't relate at all to what she was saying. But one other thing she said in this context was she told me this story about the miser buried next to the great rabbi in Krakow. And she said the miser was her great-grandfather. Yossele the miser was her great-grandfather, but she didn't remember the name of the rabbi. And then at that event in Buffalo, you told the story. And I was so fascinated. You knew much more details than my mother had told me, and I wanted to make sure that I knew that I could retain all of those details, and that's why I asked you to repeat it several times. and after that, I couldn't be comfortable with the fact that I was Jewish, and I'm living like a Catholic priest, no less. And I began to look into Judaism and to study some Jewish texts, and I became captivated. And finally, there came the point where I said, I have to return to my people. I mean, I accepted that these were my people. And he said, so I came to Israel. I studied for several years in a yeshiva. I got married and have several wonderful children, and I am a full Bretzlover Chassid. Rabbi Shulchat was very amazed, and he thanked the Chassid very much for coming up to him, for remembering him, and filling him in on all that had happened. As he started walking away from the Kotel to go back to where we were staying, Rabbi Shulchat couldn't stop marveling at the intricacies of the divine supervision of everything that goes on, and finally he said to himself, I'm able to understand why the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, encouraged me so much to participate in this interfaith event. Normally a thing that he would discourage people from, and how it was such a marvelous thing, and that all the good things that came out of him attending this event and speaking there.